Todos que estiveram aqui ontem sentiram que o clima de entusiasmo, de animação ao longo dos corredores, nos estandes, nos auditórios, e esperamos que isso se mantenha hoje, depende de todos nós que estamos aqui. Temos hoje uma programação muito rica, novamente. Contamos aí com a participação de Andy Doyle. Andy Doyle é um profissional extremamente importante dentro da cadeia de tintas em âmbito mundial. É o presidente da American Coatings Association e também do World Coatings Council. O World Coatings Council reúne as associações de fabricantes de tintas do mundo inteiro, como a ABRAFATI e a própria American Coatings Association. E é um fórum privilegiado para a discussão dos temas globais que afetam a indústria de tintas. Entre esses temas, sustentabilidade ocupa naturalmente uma posição de destaque. E é exatamente esse o tema sobre o qual Andy falará, com toda a sua vivência, sua experiência, a coordenação de iniciativas muito relevantes nos Estados Unidos relacionadas, por exemplo, ao gerenciamento de sobras de tintas com o programa Paint Care, ou a questão do grafite, combate ao uso ilegal ou nocivo dos sprays. Existem diversas iniciativas que a American Coatings Association promove e, além disso, ele tem todo o conhecimento proporcionado aí por sua atuação em âmbito global. Certamente sairemos daqui mais ricos em informação, em conteúdo, em conhecimento do que entramos. Andy, please, it's up to you now.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Fabio, for that wonderful introduction. I'm sorry I didn't understand a word that you said. So I trust that it was very complimentary. So Steve was whispering in my ear that I think it's very nice. So thank you to everyone from ABRAFATI. Antonio, Carlos, thank you very much for your kind hospitality and your welcoming of Steve Sides and I here at your wonderful show. ABRAFATI 2019 is fabulous. It's really a successful event, so congratulations for that, and thank you for your partnership. And Fabio, thank you very much for your arrangements and helping facilitate this session. So, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you this morning at this wonderful event and to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about sustainability and how we are managing sustainability in the United States as well as globally through the World Coatings Council. And so I have two positions or two roles. One is president of the American Coatings Association, which is located in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And then I'm also president of the World Coatings Council, which is also headquartered in Washington, D.C. And so I'm going to speak to you today from both of those positions. Share with you a little bit of information about how we see sustainability in the U.S., what we are trying to do as an association and as an industry, the coatings industry, and then also some of the developments or activities that are happening worldwide and how the World Coatings Council is addressing sustainability. Now, I need to say up front that I'm not a sustainability expert. I have people who work for us who are much more knowledgeable in this, and they have shared the information with me, and hopefully I'll do a reasonably good job passing on that information to you. But if you have questions after the session or during the session, please don't hesitate to ask me. So if you allow me, I'd like to begin by giving you just a brief explanation of the American Coatings Association and the World Coatings Council. ACA in the United States is very much like ABRAFATI. We are the primary organization representing paint and coatings manufacturers in the United States. We have a membership of coatings manufacturers, raw material suppliers, chemical distributors, adhesives and sealants manufacturers, and we also have a robust group of science and technology professionals who are members of the association. And in that way, we function both as an association representing the companies, the manufacturing interests, but we also represent the professional side as a professional society. So we're very much involved in science and technology issues on behalf of our industry. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have a staff of about 65 individuals, professionals working for us. And we're a medium-sized association in the U.S. Our revenues on an annual basis are about $70 million. Much of those revenues are dedicated to product stewardship, sustainability, recycling, through a program called Paint Care, which I'll talk about a little bit later this morning. This is what we look like as an organization. We have many aspects to ACA. We have 5 organizations that are in addition to our core association. We have a political action committee in the United States. Being involved politically, active politically, is very important. And so we have a separate group, a separate committee that manages our political action activities. We are the Secretariat, and I'll speak to that in a minute, of the World Coatings Council. We have an organization dedicated to the mitigation, to the abolishment, to addressing the idea of graffiti vandalism. So we set up an organization called the Graffiti Resource Council many years ago to work with cities and states to convince, with criminal penalties or with incentive programs, to convince people not to use graffiti vandalism, and not to use our products illegally. And we've done pretty well. We have another group, AC Media, which we partner with Vincennes Network, located out of Germany, to run our paint show and our biennial technical conference, which has been very successful. The American Coatings Show, now we've been running that for, and holding that now since 2008 very well. And then Paint Care is our product stewardship program, which I'll mention here in just a few minutes. The World Coatings Council, of which we're very proud to be associated with, and ABRAFATI is one of the major members of the World Coatings Council, and has been involved for many years, at least 10 years, I think going on 20 years now for the organization. The World Coatings Council was established in 1992, so it's going on 27 years as an organization. It was founded with the idea of bringing together associations and industry representatives to coordinate activities on the global level. And one of the areas that we're coordinating is this area of sustainability. We're an accredited non-governmental organization, and we're one of the very few industry-sponsored organizations that are accredited at the United Nations level. And that's important because that gives us an opportunity to present positions, to present papers, to work in committees and work groups to discuss issues that are evolving at United Nations level. And that is very important because, as you've seen over the years, things that begin on an international basis at UN level end up coming to the individual countries. Whether it's the US or Brazil or other parts of the world, we end up seeing the same issues. The World Coatings Council is blessed with a robust membership of associations representing all of the key manufacturing centers, paint manufacturing centers globally. So here are the members, the logos. We have members in North America, South America, ABRAFATI being the key member there, in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, in Europe with the German Association, the British, the French, and the European-wide Association. This council over the years has established a very broad network which has been extremely effective for our industry. You can see from this slide that we have the active members of the World Coatings Council are those depicted or shaded in blue. However, we also have a broader network that expands to some, I think, 35 different associations globally by working with regional associations that have developed over the years. And one in this part of the world is called the Latin PIN, of which ABRAFATI is a member, and I believe that is currently being chaired by the president of the ANAFAPIT organization from Mexico. And so you can see Latin PIN there identified. There's a group called the Asian Paint Industry Council in Asia, which is set up the same way, and CEPI, which is the European organization. In those organizations, there are many other associations. And what that's done for us is created a network where we can reach out and we can discuss issues of importance and get information from all parts of the world. And sustainability is a no different issue. So with that introduction, I'd like to begin and give you some sense of what we're doing on the sustainability front, both in the US and globally. So when you think about sustainability, and this, I'm sure, for those of you who are working in this area, is nothing new. And much of what I'm going to say could be repetitive, but hopefully it's something that resonates with you in this area. But when you think about sustainability, it's really three different areas. It's the people area, the planet area, and the profit area: economic, environmental, and social. And so when we work on sustainability, much of our effort is concentrated on the environmental side. That's, in essence, where we're working the most as an industry. But it does have impact on both the social aspect of it, obviously, and the economic or the profit aspect, how well our companies are doing, how they're responding to this, what they're doing in the marketplace. But as we look at it, our focus ends up being a bit more on the environmental side, but let's not forget the other two. Now, all of you know that these three pillars were first identified in 2005 at the World Summit of Social Development, and this definition is being used globally by all the actors in this area. So some of the sustainability drivers that are pushing our efforts, both in the US and globally, deal with one major driver is the emergence of green building. And this is being driven in the United States by a group called the United States Green Building Council, USGBC. And they developed a rating design system for the construction of new buildings, green buildings in the United States. It's called LEED. the leadership in energy and environmental development or design. And this system, developed in the United States, has become the leading system for green building across the globe and is being utilized in many, many countries right now. Besides the LEED system, and this is happening everywhere, it's not just in the US, obviously it's happening in Brazil, we have increasingly stringent environmental regulations. And for those of you who think that the environmental movement has stopped or has slowed down in the United States because of the current administration and their push, I guess, for less environmental regulations, that's not at all true. Because in the United States, whenever the federal government decides to slow down on an environmental push, what happens then is that the state governments take up the cause and they decide they have to do more. So we end up with the federal government pulling back and the state governments moving forward. So you have no pause in environmental regulations or going forward on environmental issues. You just have different governments managing the issue or pushing the issue. On a global basis, what we've seen over the past, I think, 10 or 12 years is the development of these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, pushing the idea of sustainability, global accords like the Rio +20 Summit and the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development and the World Summit on Sustainable Development. These accords are pushing sustainability, as you well know, and also the use of LEED in green building. That is pushing everything. So I mentioned the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, if you walk around the show floor, you've seen some companies who have displayed these sustainability goals and are demonstrating how they're meeting the goals on a company basis. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But these were first put into place in 2015 when the United Nations passed their Agenda 2030. And part of that Agenda 2030 was to put forth these 17 sustainable development goals. And these goals were meant to challenge individual countries, not companies, countries, to meet each and every one of these sustainable development goals, make progress, hopefully make progress on all of them at 100% by the year 2030. And so we see that the world is making some progress toward these goals. And from this map, which was produced from a report from a group called the Sustainability Solutions Development Network, they just published their report here in September. And this report analyzes the progress of 193 countries as they have tried to meet the various sustainable development goals, the 17 sustainable development goals. And you can see from the map here, the shaded areas, that almost every country has made progress on the sustainable development goals, many of which have made progress on more than 70% of the 17 SDGs. And that's great. That sounds like a lot of progress, and it is quite a bit of progress for the world against these SDGs. Some areas of the world, the Nordic countries, which are not surprising because they seem to lead in environmental stewardship in many areas. The Nordic countries of Denmark, Sweden, and Finland lead the index. But it's important to note that no country, not one single country thus far, has made progress on all 17 goals. So even though we have the Nordic countries doing quite well, they have not made significant progress on all 17. We took a look at these goals, and we did this through our World Coatings Council, and we're doing some additional work through the WCC. And we looked at which of the 17 goals are the most relevant to the coatings industry. And so we selected these 7 goals as those that are most relevant. Now, that does not mean there is no relevance of the other 10 SDGs, but these seem to fit most readily with what the coatings industry is doing and what it's trying to achieve. And so the ones that we're looking at more closely are clean water and sanitation, life below water, life in the seas, responsible consumption and production, life on land, affordable and clean energy, industry innovation and infrastructure, and sustainable cities and communities. And on the last point, I think that you'll find when you look at some of the coatings companies and some of their own sustainability plans, they actually specifically point out this idea of contributing to the development of more sustainable cities. So how is the World Coatings Council addressing this problem? We had a meeting in January this year. It was our annual meeting. We met in Paris, and we looked at the issue of sustainability, and knowing its importance to the industry at large and its importance to the countries at large, the World Coatings Council decided we have to take on this issue and we have to develop a new initiative. And so what we decided to do is what can an organization of associations do best? And we determined that the goal of our project, or how can we best serve the industry, is for us to determine where and how the coatings industry can best contribute to these sustainable development goals. And so over the next few years, the World Coatings Council plans to work with its member associations, ABRAFATI being one of them, to collect information on how its members are addressing sustainability and what are their strategies. And we're also going to collect information from the individual associations. So if you have a sustainability effort, and I know that you do here in Brazil through your sustainability committee, we're going to be reaching out to you to categorize, to collect, to inventory those efforts, so we can then share those efforts on a global scale with agencies at the UN to let them know the coatings industry is contributing, as well as use that to promote the good deeds and the good work of the associations and the World Coatings Council. We feel that this can be our major contributor. As a federation of associations, it's unlikely that we can initiate a global program that would substitute for what you're doing on a local basis. But we can certainly promote and collect what you and the other colleagues are doing, and then allow that, and then provide that to key decision makers. Some specific activities in the sustainability area are worth noting. I mentioned that green building was very much a driver of sustainability efforts worldwide, regulatory-wise or voluntary-wise. And this slide gives you an idea of the green building activity in North America. And this report was provided by a group called Dodge Data and Analytics. And it looks at world green building trends. And looking at this data, we expect that in North America, that green building will increase over the next 3 years in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And the reasons for this continuing increase are demands by tenants and building owners for green space, local environmental and building regulations that are looking to reduce carbon emissions and provide healthier work and living spaces. So there's a continuing need and continuing drive. So if you look at this graph tells you a few things. It says by 2021, we expect that 32% of the developers in the United States will have 60% or more of their projects being green. So a third of the builders in the United States will have the majority of their projects being green building projects by 2021. And this is in an industry that already leads the green building space across the world. In Canada, that number grows to 48% of developers will have a majority of their products being green building. And in Mexico, that number increases even more to 54% of developers expecting to have more than 60% of their projects being green building projects. Now this is an interesting slide in terms of another set of statistics, and this looks at the global ranking of green building outside of North America. And you can see from this slide that a couple things stand out. Firstly, there is a significant amount of green building happening globally. This is not a phenomenon in just one country, it is happening globally. And so outside of the United States, outside of North America, you have a list of top 10 countries. The country that has the most green building projects outside of the US is China. Right now, China has somewhere in the neighborhood of approximately 70 million gross square meters that are being certified to the LEED rating system. And that equates to about 1,500 individual projects. Not surprising, China's a very, very large country. They have a tremendous amount of building going on. But what's nice about it is that most of their building, or much of their building now, is green building, and it's certifying to LEED standards. Equally important and impressive is what's happening in Brazil. Brazil was ranked 4th in green building activity outside of North America, and it has about 17 million gross square meters of certified to the LEED standards, with more than 500 different projects. So that is a very, very significant effort by the country of Brazil. Looking at environmental performance in the US, just to give you an example, you could go to any country, whether it's here or in Europe, and collect some of the same data. But I think this is illustrative of what is happening in the US in terms of environmental progress. So this slide shows in California what is happening with the amount of VOCs being used in architectural products. And the graph on this slide shows in gallons and in VOC content that architectural coatings in California over a 20-year period since 1993 have declined dramatically. In fact, over this 20-year period, the average VOC content for architectural coatings has been reduced by some 80%, which is a remarkable figure. Even remarkable is that sales have either remained the same or have increased over that period of time. Now, equally true are air emissions coming from the paint industry. In this slide, you see some air emissions data from Southern California, which is the most heavily regulated portion of the country and traditionally has been one of the most environmentally challenged in terms of emissions and VOC. So what this shows is that despite increasing or similar sales, emissions from architectural coatings have decreased some 40% over the past 12 years. I think those two slides and the next one I'll show you really demonstrate the industry's commitment to reducing its environmental footprint. Now this slide is, I think, of particular interest, and this really demonstrates where the industry is going in terms of toxic air emissions. This data was taken from a report that's issued by our U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And it shows that between 1990 and 2014, the amount of emissions from the paint industry across the United States has decreased by some 81%, from 12 million pounds of total emissions to approximately 3 million pounds. But what is, I think, as impressive, if not more impressive, is that the toxicity of those emissions have also increased. So you have, let's see if I can get this. So you have the total emissions going down substantially, some 81%. But the toxicity of those emissions have also gone down substantially. In fact, the toxicity, or what they call the adjusted toxicity factor of the emissions has been reduced by some 94%. So the bottom line for that is not only the total has gone down, but what is being emitted is far less toxic. So very good story on behalf of the industry. So let me talk about, just for a little bit, about some of the things that the coatings industry is doing in the U.S. through the American Coatings Association. We have a number of initiatives going on. I want to talk to you a little bit about Paint Care, which is our product stewardship initiative, our paint recycling program. We're also going through a process of putting together what we refer to as product category rules. We're also developing a multi-attribute sustainability program, and we're also issuing on a biennial basis now an industry-wide sustainability report. We're very pleased to be celebrating this year 10 years of our Paint Care program. Started in 2009 with the passage of a law in Oregon, and then following the next year with the first program being put in place in the state of Oregon. The U.S. coatings industry has put together the most successful paint recycling program in the world. We were not the first. The first program in this area was started in Canada and British Columbia in 1994. And they have a very significant and very successful program throughout Canada, I believe in all 11 provinces, and they're doing quite well. We followed on that program, but we're very pleased now to have programs in 10 states in the United States and collecting more paint for recycling than anywhere else in the world. So some of the broad goals of Paint Care were to establish a program to maximize the control and design of this product stewardship program for our industry. Our choice was simple. Does the industry put together a program to manage the collection, the processing, the recycling, in some cases the disposal of leftover consumer paint, or do we allow the government or leave it to the government to put in place a similar program? We felt for many reasons that it would be better for the paint industry to begin a program, to put one together, to manage it, to take responsibility, and to do it ourselves as to having the government doing it. Control, efficiency, management, you can name a lot of reasons. Now, having said that, we work very closely with the local governments and the state governments in which we work. So that was broad goal number one. We wanted to reduce the cost to state and local governments, the cost of managing post-consumer waste, leftover decorative products is very high, and so we wanted to build a program that would reduce the cost. We wanted to increase the amount of recycling, and so we did that, and we're doing that. And lastly, a broad goal for the program was to educate the consumer or the user of Deco products, make them more aware of the need to manage paint in a better and safer way, and to help us recycle more paint. Some program highlights. We are in 10 states with programs active. That should grow to 11 states when we start a program in New York. We put this in place on a state-by-state basis in the United States. It's not possible for us to go to the federal government and ask them to put in place a unified federal program. It just is not possible because of the way our system is organized. So we do it on a state-by-state basis. We do it with a consistent program in each and every one of the states. So every state program is the same. They're not different. They're consistent, they're uniform. We collect household architectural paint. We collect it from consumers, painting contractors, and businesses with considerable paint. During this period of time, we've collected 144 million liters since 2010, and on an annual basis, we're collecting about 27 million liters. Over 200 paint companies are involved in this program at this point in time. If we go into a state, let's say Washington State, where we're starting a program next year, by law, every paint company must participate in that program. So there's no option. It's not voluntary. It was voluntary for the industry to initiate it, but it's not voluntary when we put it in place because we have legislation, a law that authorizes us to do it. The infrastructure of the program is quite extensive. Our network is mostly network of paint stores. We ask our member companies, the participating companies, to volunteer to have their stores serve as collection points. Paint Care, ACA's Paint Care provides a bin or 2 or 3, depending on the size of the stores. Consumers or contractors come to those stores, they drop off the paint at those stores, and then our haulers, our transporters pick them up and they take them to the processors. So we have that network of stores. We also have special events in those parts of the states that are rural, where there are not that many people and not that many stores. We create special events with governments and by ourselves. We had more than 200 special events in a year's time throughout the programs. And we have something called a large volume pickup program, which allows contractors who have more than 200 gallons of product left over to call us up and ask us for a special pickup, which is what we do. So some of the program messages: reduce. It's counterintuitive for us to tell people not to buy paint. We are not telling people to not buy paint. We are encouraging people to look at what they need in the job that they're having and buy what they need, so there's less left over. We're encouraging people to reuse what they have in another fashion, and then finally, of course, recycle it. So in terms of end-of-life management, there are a number of uses for this leftover paint. Paint-to-paint recycling makes up about 65–66% of what is collected. We also have reuse, which is about 5%. So about 70% of what we collect is either recycled into new paint, recycled paint, or it's good that we take it and we put it back on the shelf at a reuse store or a municipal store, and somebody buys it. There are other uses. Solvent-based paint we use as an energy source for waste to energy. Some of latex is mixed into cement, and some of it is landfilled, and some of it is used as a landfill cover. So how does this get paid for. This is in the U.S., it's about a $65 million a year program for the 10 states, well, 70 million soon. We put a fee on, Paint Care asked that companies put a fee on the sale of new paint in the stores. And so these are the fee structures that we use in the various states. We have 3 separate fee structures. This is the recovery rate that we're experiencing in the various states. And what this means is that approximately 11.5% of the paint that is sold in 1 year is returned for processing and recycling. So if there was 100 gallons of paint sold in Minnesota in year 1, then 11.5 gallons of leftover paint would come back. Now that doesn't mean it's the same paint. Obviously the leftover paint could be from 20 years ago, but that's about it. So we have a very high return rate in a recovery rate in Minnesota and a very low rate in the District of Columbia. That doesn't mean one place is any more environmentally conscious or better. It could be awareness, it could be what's out there, it could be a lot of different things. And then we have a fee structure here that we use for the various states, which is how we pay for the program. So some other activities that we have going on, and I should say just one final word on Paint Care. This is we're very proud of the program. It's been a leader, and we're excited about the potential for growth. It's going to take a long time to get to all 50 states. So I'm hoping we get to 20 states in the next 5 or 6 years, but we have to do it, we have to do it gradually and in order to do it well. And I think that that's proving itself. So the association and the industry is also involved in a number of other things. We're developing a series of what's called product category rules. And these product category rules are put together on a volunteer basis by our industry. And they create criteria, uniform and consistent criteria by which people analyze their product and assess their product in order to write environmental product declarations. And you're aware of this, these environmental product declarations are being asked by governments, they're being required by customer groups, retailers, other groups, saying, tell me what's in your product, tell me what the environmental footprint of it. But in order to get something done on a consistent basis, you need to start with these product category rules, and so we're embarking on that. We've gone through the process in a number of areas. We finalized a product category rule for architectural coatings. We just finished one for resinous floor coatings. We're in the process of completing a PCR for powder coatings. And we have a series of product category rules expected over the next 3 to 4 years. Coil coatings, intumescent, metal parts, food packaging. So we're quite active in this area. One thing that we're doing, which is quite challenging for us, is we're looking to put together a sustainability program for the architectural segment of our industry in the U.S. And this is a multi-attribute sustainability program that we intend to create through the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute's Standard Development Program. So it'll be a standard-like program, a certification-like program that ACA and the paint industry creates. So why are we doing this? One of the reasons, or really the primary reason, is we need to bring certainty for the industry to how they can cope with all of the various green building standards. Now, LEED is by far and away the leading standard in the US and globally. But if you just take a look at this slide here, these are all of the, maybe not all, there could be actually more, but these are certainly most of the green building standards that exist in the United States. So if you're a paint company, I mean, what do you do? How do you cope with all of this? So the coatings industry in the US said we need to develop our own program. And one of the driving reasons, if we can develop our own program and then have this program accepted by these other programs, then our companies go to one area, they get certified once, and everyone's accepted the ACA program. And we have a high level of confidence that we can do it. Other industries in the US have done this. The building Industrial Furniture Manufacturers Association has done it, and they've created a very good program, very effective one. So some of the benefits of our sustainability program, again, consistency and broad acceptance by the green building community, reduce confusion in the marketplace, create a common set of criteria, very important, a level playing field, if you will. Allow our members to acquire maximum credit in programs like the LEED program, and allow the industry to be proactive in this space. This is very important to our members, and that is we don't want to just be reacting and following. We want to show that we're leaders in this area. So some of the measures that are going to be part of the sustainability program, what our companies will need to show in order to get a rating and then get a result. And these are pretty common areas: product performance and durability, environmental performance of the company in general. What are you doing in the what's your environmental footprint? What are you doing in the carbon area? What are you doing in waste management? What are you doing in water and air pollution? What is your social responsibility program? All of these will need to be identified and rated. And you can see you can see the commonalities of this with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that's no accident. So because everything is evolving globally, we have to do, whatever we do, we have to do in a consistent manner. So finally, last but not least, ACA just last year produced its first sustainability report on the industry. And we plan to do this every 2 years. The next one will be issued in conjunction with our trade show in April of 2019, the American Coatings Show. We felt it's important to let the world know, let the industry know, let the government know what the industry is doing, what we're doing collectively through the association, and what we're doing on an individual company basis. So we've issued a report, and some of the things that we've talked about in the report are our commitment to sustainability, ACAs in the industry, some of the achievements that we have through programs like Paint Care, what we're doing in the science, technology, and education area in terms of how we're training the next generation of chemists and formulators. We have a safety awards program that we manage every year. We issue safety awards annually to our companies. We want to continue to look at our emissions trends and the economic contributions of the industry. We shouldn't put aside that, because if you look at the 3 pillars of sustainability and look at the SDG goals, they also encourage human development. And our industry does a great deal, not only for its employees, but people who use the product. We're a product that in and of itself is inherently sustainable. We help keep things going. We help preserve products and structures, et cetera. So that is important. And finally, we ask our companies to give case studies about what they're doing as companies and in the industry. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate having the opportunity to be with you today. Again, Antonio, Carlos, thank you very much for your hospitality. And congratulations on a very successful ABRAFATI 2019. Thank you, everyone.
The proportion between waterborne paints and solvent-borne paints in the U.S., you know that?
Yes, it's, I think it's close to 90%. So it's a very high.
90%.
Yeah,
Well,
it's very high.
Not very different from what happens in Brazil.
Yeah, no, it's, and that trend has been going on for many years. So I could be off by 5%, but it's very high, yeah.
Good. Questions? Perguntas?
Okay.
Aqui o nosso agradecimento para você, uma lembrança. Só uma lembrança para o Andy, se deslocou dos Estados Unidos para estar aqui conosco para essa brilhante palestra. Nós temos aqui um momento especial, um modelo também para a gente se referir na questão de sustentabilidade. Logo em seguida vamos estar com o Zé Carlos Martins aqui para falar sobre a indústria da construção, nosso querido Zé Carlos, presidente da CEBIC. E aqui fica o nosso thank you so much for coming, and we're looking forward to see you next year here. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.